Introduction to costume design in film. Costume design is one of the most quietly powerful yet indispensable arts of cinema. Though audiences may rarely stop to consciously evaluate a character's clothing while watching a film, the costumes they see fundamentally shape how they interpret that character, how they feel the atmosphere of the story, and how they experience the entire cinematic world. Costumes are not mere garments. They are narrative instruments, visual cues, cultural signifiers, and mood setters that operate at both conscious and unconscious levels of perception. This lecture will provide a sweeping overview of why costume design matters so deeply in filmmaking, how it has historically anchored character identity and world building, and how the collaborative work of costume designers, directors, actors, and production teams ensures that clothing is never arbitrary, but always integral to the storytelling process. Costumes as narrative tools, bringing characters and stories to life. When an actor steps in front of the camera, the transformation into character is not complete until they inhabit the costume designed for their role. Costumes serve as visual shorthand for identity. They instantly communicate aspects of a character's age, social class, occupation, temperament, and emotional state. Before a single line of dialogue is spoken, the audience has already begun interpreting the story through clothing. Consider the trench coat and fedora in film noir classics. These garments are more than stylish choices. They tell us the character lives in a morally ambiguous world, caught between darkness and fleeting flashes of light. Or think of the fantastical gowns in Cinderella adaptations. The elaborate silhouette and sparkling fabric do not just make the heroine beautiful, they externalize the inner transformation of her story arc, embodying hope, possibility, and escape from oppression. In this sense, costume design is world building. It situates the story in time and place, whether that is ancient Rome, a futuristic dystopia, or a contemporary urban setting. Just as cinematography uses light to shape atmosphere, costumes use fabric, silhouette, and color to establish mood. A palette of muted grays and browns can signal desolation or poverty, while vibrant, saturated hues can transport the audience into a whimsical or heightened universe. Defining character and setting through effective costumes. The most effective costumes are those that feel inseparable from the characters who wear them. When we imagine Darth Vader, we do not think of the actor first, but of the costume. The glossy black helmet, the flowing cape, the mechanical breathing apparatus. The design fuses character with visual presence, transforming a role into an icon. Similarly, Dorothy's gingham dress and ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz do more than clothe her. They symbolize innocence, belonging, and the magical potential of home. Period films rely heavily on costume design to anchor historical authenticity. A Civil War drama without accurate uniforms or gowns risks shattering the illusion of its world. Audiences intuitively recognize when attire does not belong to the supposed time. Conversely, when design is meticulous, the costumes allow viewers to feel as though they have stepped into another century. Pride and Prejudice adaptations, for instance, convey the manners and hierarchies of Regency England through corsetry, empire waist dresses, and tailored coats, immediately situating us within that society. Even contemporary films depend on costume nuance. In The Devil Wears Prada, the protagonist's transformation from frumpy sweaters to couture ensembles marks her professional and personal evolution. In superhero films, the costume defines the character's brand. The bat symbol on Batman's chest or the iconic S of Superman are not arbitrary logos, but narrative signals of power, morality, and myth. The collaborative nature of costume design. Costume designers are not isolated artists, they are integral members of the filmmaking team. Their process begins with script analysis, understanding not only what clothes characters wear, but why they wear them. This requires close consultation with the director to align costume choices with the overall tone of the film. If a director envisions a gritty, naturalistic drama, costumes must avoid glamorization. If the film aims for stylized fantasy, costumes can embrace exaggeration and spectacle. Designers also work intimately with actors. Fittings are not simply about adjusting hems or waistlines. They are collaborative explorations. An actor might discover that wearing a certain jacket alters their posture, which in turn influences how they perform the character. A well-fitted costume can give an actor confidence, authority, or vulnerability, enhancing performance. At times, actors contribute ideas, a suggestion for a lucky hat, a family heirloom, or a signature color that deepens the portrayal. Furthermore, costume designers coordinate with production designers and cinematographers to achieve visual harmony. A costume's color must complement the set design, not clash with it. A sequined dress may sparkle under stage lights, but could cause unwanted glare on camera if not tested with the cinematographer. Hair and makeup departments also collaborate closely, ensuring that the entire character presentation, from hairstyle to shoes, forms a cohesive whole. This collaborative nature underscores a vital truth. Film is a collective art, and costume design operates at the nexus of visual storytelling, performance, and technical execution. Why costume design matters. Ultimately, the importance of costume design lies in its ability to invisibly weave the fabric of story into the fabric of clothing. Viewers may not consciously analyze why they trust a medieval knight's authenticity or feel unease at the sight of a villain's sharp suit, but these reactions are shaped by the costume designer's decisions. In the absence of such thoughtful design, films would feel hollow, their worlds unconvincing, their characters less believable. Moreover, costumes become part of cultural memory. The black leather jacket in Grease, the white dress of Marilyn Monroe in The 7-Year Itch, the Black Panther suit, all these have transcended their films to become enduring symbols in global culture. Costume design, therefore, is not only an element of filmmaking craft, but also a shaper of collective imagination. Conclusion. Costume design is the art of turning fabric into narrative, stitching character into cloth, and weaving worlds into wearable form. It breathes life into characters, anchors stories in their cultural and historical contexts, and enhances mood and atmosphere. Through collaboration with directors, actors, and fellow designers, costume professionals ensure that clothing becomes inseparable from character, and that audiences are transported fully into the cinematic experience. As we begin this course, keep in mind that every ribbon, every seam, and every color choice carries meaning. The study of costume design is not about clothing alone. It is about storytelling through the language of dress, a language that has shaped cinema since its earliest days and continues to define its future. The costume designer's role and responsibilities. Costume design is far more than the selection of clothing items. It is a disciplined craft that requires artistry, historical knowledge, and a strong capacity for collaboration. At the heart of this process is the costume designer, whose responsibilities extend across every visible figure on screen, from the lead actor to supporting cast to background extras. This lecture will unpack the multifaceted role of the costume designer, describe the primary responsibilities of their supporting team, and emphasize the deliberate nature of every wardrobe decision made for film. The costume designer's central task. The central duty of the costume designer is to design all costumes for the production. This includes the primary characters, the ensemble cast, and even the seemingly anonymous figures that populate the background of scenes. Whether designing a lavish gown for a lead actress or sourcing a realistic uniform for a background police officer, the costume designer ensures that every garment fits seamlessly into the film's world. The designer's work begins by analyzing the script. They must understand the narrative, the themes, the historical or cultural setting, and the psychological nuances of each character. From this analysis, the designer develops a visual language of clothing that communicates character traits, social position, and emotional states. Importantly, this visual language must be consistent with the director's vision for the film. Collaboration with the director is critical. Costume designers attend concept meetings, review storyboards, and adjust their ideas based on feedback. If a director desires a gritty, naturalistic aesthetic, costumes must avoid glamorization. If the story is a stylized fantasy, the designer may lean into imaginative shapes, textures, and colors. Costume design, therefore, is a balancing act, serving the story while also contributing to the overall mood and visual tone of the film. The costume designer also works closely with actors. During fittings, actors and designers discuss comfort, movement, and character embodiment. A costume may help an actor find the physicality of their role, standing taller in a military uniform or slouching in worn, oversized clothes. This dialogue ensures that costumes not only look appropriate, but also support performance. Key supporting roles in the costume department. Film productions are collaborative by necessity, and the costume designer leads a team of skilled specialists who make their vision possible. Four key roles often appear across productions. 1. Assistant designer. The assistant designer supports research, manages secondary design tasks, and often helps translate the head designer's ideas into practical steps. They may oversee specific characters or sequences, ensuring continuity and fidelity to the designer's concept. 2. Costume illustrator. The illustrator produces detailed sketches and renderings of proposed costumes. These visual aids are essential tools for communicating ideas to the director, production designer, and producers. Illustrations transform conceptual notes into tangible images, providing a roadmap for construction and approval. 3. Costume supervisor. The supervisor is the logistical anchor of the department. They manage budgets, track the progress of construction, handle rentals and sourcing, and oversee the organization of costumes on set. The supervisor ensures that every costume arrives when needed, is maintained, and is returned or stored properly after use. 4. Costumers or set costumers. Costumers work directly with actors during shooting. They dress performers each day, check continuity against reference photos, repair garments, and manage quick changes or resets between takes. Costumers act as the frontline guardians of costume accuracy once filming begins. Together, this hierarchy resembles a small organization. The designer provides artistic leadership, the illustrator visualizes, the supervisor organizes, and the costumers execute. Each member of the team plays a distinct but interdependent role in realizing the costume plan. Every garment as a deliberate choice. One of the most misunderstood aspects of costume design is the assumption that only elaborate or unusual clothing qualifies as designed. In truth, every piece of clothing seen on screen is a deliberate choice. If a character wears a simple t-shirt and jeans, those garments were not selected randomly. The designer has chosen the exact cut, color, and degree of wear to signal something about the character. Perhaps youth, socioeconomic status, or emotional state. A faded shirt may communicate poverty or nostalgia, while a crisp new shirt may signal confidence or change. Even background extras are considered carefully. Their clothing must blend into the film's palette, reinforcing the believability of the scene without distracting from the main action. In a period drama, for instance, a single extra wearing a modern wristwatch could disrupt the entire illusion. The attention to detail extends beyond aesthetics. Costumes must be functional. They must allow actors to move, fight, or dance, and they must withstand the rigors of filming, which often involves multiple takes and long hours. Designers must anticipate these demands and build or source costumes that combine visual accuracy with practical durability. Collaboration and unity of vision. The costume designer is a bridge between multiple departments. Directors, who set narrative goals. Actors, who interpret characters physically and emotionally. Production designers, who oversee sets and environments. Cinematographers, who test how colors and fabrics read on camera. Hair and makeup teams, who coordinate to ensure the head-to-toe appearance is cohesive. This collaborative process ensures that no costume feels disconnected from the world on screen. A costume's silhouette may echo the shapes of the set design, or its colors may complement the cinematographer's lighting palette. When these elements align, the audience perceives a unified vision, an immersive cinematic world where every detail works in harmony. Conclusion. The role of the costume designer, supported by a specialized team, is a blend of artistry, research, and leadership. They are responsible not only for designing clothes, but for crafting meaning through garments, guiding actors into character, and ensuring that every frame of the film is visually consistent. The assistant designer, illustrator, supervisor, and costumers all support this vision, together forming a department that is both creative and logistical. Above all, the discipline rests on one principle. Nothing on screen is accidental. Every button, every hemline, every shade of fabric is an intentional part of the storytelling process. By understanding this, we can better appreciate the invisible labor and artistry that shape the films we love. Lecture: The Evolution of Costume Design in Cinema. Costume design, like cinema itself, has never been static. It has evolved across more than a century of filmmaking, shaped by shifting technologies, changing artistic traditions, and the continual dialogue between fashion and film. To understand the role of costume design today, we must trace its history from the earliest days of silent cinema through the golden age of Hollywood into the mid-20th century studio era, and finally into the complex, technologically advanced practices of the modern era. The silent era in early Hollywood. In the earliest decades of cinema, roughly the 1910s and 1920s, film costume design bore the heavy imprint of theatrical traditions. Many early filmmakers and actors came from the stage, and therefore costumes often resembled stage costumes, exaggerated, ornate, and designed to be read from a distance. Because silent films lacked spoken dialogue, costumes served as visual language, helping audiences instantly identify whether a character was a hero, a villain, wealthy, or poor. Consider the lavish costumes of Cecil B. DeMille's biblical epics such as The Ten Commandments, 1923. These films use spectacle, ornate robes, elaborate headdresses, glittering jewelry to impress audiences. Costumes were designed less for historical accuracy and more for grandeur, rooted in theater and opera traditions. Flapper fashion of the 1920s also made its way onto screens. Actresses like Clara Bow wore short dresses, cloche hats, and bobbed hairstyles, cementing the connection between cinema and contemporary fashion. Audiences often imitated what they saw on screen, establishing film as a driver of popular style trends. The Golden Age of Hollywood. As sound entered cinema in the late 1920s and early 1930s, costume design gained new complexity. The Golden Age of Hollywood, spanning the 1930s through the 1950s, brought forth an era of studio-controlled production where costume departments became vast, industrial-scale workshops. It was during this period that legendary designers emerged. Adrian at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, created the unforgettable costumes for The Wizard of Oz, 1939, including Dorothy's gingham dress and ruby slippers, an ensemble that became an icon of American cinema. Perhaps the most famous name was Edith Head, who worked at Paramount and later Universal Studios. With a career spanning more than 50 years, she earned 8 Academy Awards and dressed stars like Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor. Her designs in films such as Roman Holiday, 1953, and Sabrina, 1954, defined elegance and sophistication for generations. Edith Head exemplified how a costume designer could shape both Hollywood glamour and broader fashion culture. The introduction of Technicolor film in the 1930s also transformed costume choices. Designers had to think about how colors would translate on screen. Bright, bold palettes were often favored to showcase the new technology, as seen in musicals like Singin' in the Rain, 1952. Color expanded the expressive vocabulary of costume, allowing designers to signal emotion and theme through palette choices. Mid-20th century developments. By the 1950s and 1960s, the studio system began to decline, but the legacy of studio costume departments remained strong. This period saw greater experimentation as films explored realism and social commentary. Costumes shifted from glamorous fantasy toward more authentic, character-driven clothing. Designers such as Irene Sharaff brought psychological subtlety to costume choices. In West Side Story, 1961, her use of color distinguished rival gangs, the Jets in cooler tones, the Sharks in warmer hues, visually signaling division while contributing to the film's rhythm. Television also influenced film during this time. With audiences accustomed to more casual clothing on TV, film costumes had to balance spectacle with relatability. Designers could no longer rely solely on grandeur. They had to ground characters in recognizable social contexts. The modern era and beyond. From the 1970s onward, costume design reflected the increasing diversity of genres, the rise of auteur directors, and the globalization of fashion. In the 1970s, films like Star Wars, 1977, by George Lucas introduced futuristic designs that drew on both ancient and modern references. Costume designer John Mallow combined samurai armor influences with science fiction aesthetics to create Darth Vader's suit, an enduring symbol of cinematic villainy. The 1980s and 90s saw designers like Colleen Atwood and Sandy Powell rise to prominence. Atwood's collaborations with Tim Burton on films such as Edward Scissorhands 1990 showcased gothic fantasy worlds where costumes embodied character psychology. Powell became renowned for period dramas such as Shakespeare in Love 1998, where historical accuracy met artistic interpretation. In the 21st century, designers such as Ruth E. revolutionized the field by combining cultural authenticity with speculative imagination. Her work on Black Panther 2018 fused African traditional attire with Afrofuturist aesthetics, earning her an Academy Award and demonstrating how costume design could be both politically resonant and visually groundbreaking. Technological advances have also reshaped practice. Designers now use digital tools for sketching, three-dimensional modeling, and even fabric simulation, allowing them to visualize garments before construction. Superhero and fantasy films increasingly rely on costumes that blend physical garments with computer-generated imagery, expanding what is possible in visual storytelling. Conclusion: the evolution of costume design mirrors the evolution of cinema itself. From theatrical exaggeration in the silent era, to the elegance of the Golden Age, to the authenticity of mid-century realism, to the digital experimentation of today, costume design has continually adapted to meet new artistic and technological demands. Costumes remain essential storytelling devices. They locate us in time and place, reveal character, and contribute to the cultural memory of film. When we recall Dorothy's slippers, Vader's mask, or the Dora Milaje uniforms of Wakanda, we are remembering costume design as much as we are remembering cinema. The history of costume design, therefore, is not merely an accessory to film history. It is its fabric woven into every frame. Lecture: Iconic costume designers and their work. Costume design is not only a craft, it is an art form shaped by extraordinary individuals whose visions have defined eras of cinema. In this lecture, we will highlight several of the most influential costume designers in film history: Edith Head, Colleen Atwood, Sandy Powell, and Ruth E. examining their signature works, stylistic approaches, and contributions to the art of costume design. Edith Head, defining classic Hollywood. Edith Head remains perhaps the most recognizable name in costume design. Over a career spanning 5 decades, she became synonymous with the glamour of Hollywood's golden age. She worked primarily at Paramount and later at Universal Studios, dressing stars such as Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor. Achievements: Edith Head holds the record for costume design at the Academy Awards, winning 8 Oscars. Notable works: her elegant and refined designs are evident in films such as Roman Holiday, 1953, Sabrina, 1954, and All About Eve, 1950. Signature style: her style emphasized sophistication, clean lines, and character-driven elegance. She excelled at designing clothing that made stars unforgettable while still advancing the story. What we can learn from Edith Head is the importance of crafting visual identity, costumes that not only serve a role, but also contribute to defining the very image of cinema itself. Colleen Atwood, master of fantasy and the surreal. Moving into the late 20th century and early 21st century, Colleen Atwood has become the premier designer of fantasy and surrealist cinema. She is best known for her long collaboration with director Tim Burton. Notable works: Edward Scissorhands, 1990, Alice in Wonderland, 2010, and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, 2016. Signature style: Atwood is celebrated for blending Gothic influences, whimsical exaggeration, and surreal detail. Her costumes often combine historical references with fantastical elements, creating worlds that feel both familiar and otherworldly. Achievements: she has won 4 Academy Awards and has been nominated more than a dozen times. From Atwood, we learn the power of imaginative world building and how costume can transform fantasy into tangible reality. Sandy Powell. Period dramas with bold interpretation. Sandy Powell is another designer who has left an indelible mark on cinema. Known for her mastery of period films, Powell brings historical worlds to life while also infusing them with bold, stylized interpretation. Notable works: Shakespeare in Love, 1998, The Aviator, 2004, and The Favorite, 2018. Signature style: Powell often balances historical accuracy with creative exaggeration. For example, in The Favorite, she used deliberately theatrical silhouettes and stark color contrast to emphasize the decadence and intrigue of the 18th century court. Achievements: Powell has won 3 Academy Awards and is widely regarded as one of the most daring interpreters of historical costume. From Powell, we learn the importance of research depth combined with bold reinterpretation, showing that historical films need not be rigid recreations, but can serve as spaces for artistic expression. Ruth E. Carter, Cultural Legacy and Afrofuturism. Ruth E. Carter stands as a groundbreaking figure in contemporary costume design. Her work is celebrated for its cultural richness and authenticity, particularly in representing African and African American identities on screen. Notable works: Malcolm X, 1992, Amistad, 1997, and especially Black Panther, 2018. Signature style: Carter fuses historical accuracy with innovation. In Black Panther, she drew from numerous African traditions while imagining how they might evolve in a futuristic society. This blend of authenticity and speculative creativity became known as Afrofuturism in costume. Achievements: Carter became the first African-American woman to win the Academy Award for Best Costume Design for Black Panther. She has since won a second Oscar for Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, 2022. From Carter, we learn how costume design can serve as cultural storytelling, celebrating heritage while pushing creative boundaries. Lessons across designers. When comparing these designers, 3 key lessons emerge. 1. Research depth. Whether it is Powell studying 18th century garments or Carter drawing from African traditions, great designers immerse themselves in sources. 2. Innovation with materials. Atwood's surreal fabrics, Carter's integration of cultural motifs into futuristic designs, and Powell's reinterpretation of history show the importance of experimenting with form and texture. 3. Collaboration. Each designer's success rests on close collaboration with directors, actors, and production teams. Head with Hitchcock, Atwood with Burton, Powell with Scorsese, and Carter with Ryan Coogler. These partnerships demonstrate how costume design amplifies cinematic vision. Conclusion. Iconic designers shape not only films but entire cultural landscapes. Edith Head defined the glamour of classic Hollywood. Colleen Atwood expanded the visual vocabulary of fantasy. Sandy Powell redefined period design as bold and expressive. Ruth E. Carter fused cultural authenticity with futuristic imagination. Their legacies teach us that costume design is not decoration, but a central mode of storytelling. Through research, innovation, and collaboration, these designers elevated costume design into an art form that continues to influence cinema and culture. Script analysis for costume requirements. Before a single stitch of fabric is cut, the costume designer must perform one of the most crucial tasks in their process: analyzing the film script. This step transforms words on the page into a detailed blueprint for the clothing that will inhabit the screen. It requires a combination of literary interpretation, technical planning, and creative foresight. Reading the script for setting and character. The first step in analysis is reading the script carefully to identify setting and context. Costume designers note the time period, whether the story is set in the 1920s, the present day, or a speculative future. They also note the location, for instance, New York City versus rural France. These details directly shape garment style, fabric, and silhouette. Beyond setting, designers study each character's description and background. Occupation, personality, and socioeconomic status all influence how a character should appear. A lawyer in a courtroom drama may need tailored suits, while a working-class laborer might require worn, practical clothing. A character's personality, confident, timid, flamboyant, or reserved, must also be expressed visually through costume. This interpretive reading ensures that clothing does not merely cover actors, but instead communicates story and character identity. Breaking down the script, scene by scene. After this first reading, the designer moves into a technical process known as script breakdown. The goal is to create a costume plot, a comprehensive list of what each character wears in every scene of the film. A costume plot functions as a map. It details each costume change, notes the continuity of clothing across scenes, and organizes the wardrobe in relation to the film's chronology. Because films are rarely shot in sequence, the costume plot is vital to keep track of when and where each outfit is needed. For example, if scene 12 shows a character with a torn jacket, and scene 13 follows immediately in the story timeline, the costume plot ensures that the torn jacket remains consistent even if those two scenes are filmed months apart. This document becomes a central tool for the entire costume department, guiding fittings, construction, rentals, and on-set management. Special requirements from the script. The script may also specify or imply special costume needs. These include 1. Stunts and action scenes. Costumes must be built for durability or flexibility. Action sequences often damage garments, requiring multiple identical versions, called multiples, to maintain continuity across takes. 2. Scripted costume changes. Sometimes the narrative requires a costume to change dramatically in front of the audience. A classic example is a makeover montage, where the character's transformation is marked by new clothing. These scripted shifts must be anticipated and planned. 3. Symbolic outfits. Occasionally, writers specify symbolic clothing. For instance, a character might inherit a red scarf from a loved one, and that scarf becomes a recurring motif. In such cases, the designer must ensure that the garment visually conveys the intended symbolism while still fitting within the film's overall aesthetic. By carefully identifying these requirements, the designer avoids costly surprises during production. Clarifying the costume plot. It is important to clarify what is meant by a costume plot. In practical terms, this is a chart or table where each row represents a scene and each column tracks a character's clothing. Notes are included about condition, accessories, and continuity issues. Some designers also attach reference sketches or photographs as the document develops. The costume plot is not only for the designer, it is shared with the costume supervisor, costumers, and often with the director and script supervisor. It ensures that everyone is aligned on what must appear on screen, scene by scene. Conclusion. Script analysis is where imagination meets logistics. By reading the script for setting and character, breaking it down scene by scene into a costume plot, and noting special requirements such as stunts, symbolic garments, or scripted transformations, designers create the framework that guides every later stage of costume production. Without this step, costumes risk being inconsistent, ill-prepared, or disconnected from narrative needs. With it, however, costumes become precise tools of storytelling. Rooted in the text yet brought to life through design, the costume plot reminds us that nothing in a film is accidental, not even the smallest detail of a garment. It is all anchored in the careful reading and planning of the script. Character analysis and costume design. Costume design is not merely about garments. It is about translating character into a visual language that audiences can immediately understand. The process begins with character analysis, a careful study of each main character's personality, background, and story arc. By aligning clothing choices with character identity, designers ensure that costumes are not decorative but essential tools of storytelling. Analyzing personality, background, and story arc. When a costume designer first encounters a script, one of the most important tasks is to analyze the characters in depth. Personality. Is the character bold, timid, flamboyant, or restrained? A confident character may wear bright colors, sharp silhouettes, or daring accessories, while a shy character may be dressed in muted tones and softer fabrics. Background. Characters bring their histories into the present. A wealthy upbringing might be reflected in tailored clothing, fine fabrics, and luxurious details. Conversely, a character raised in poverty might wear garments that are practical, worn, or even visibly mended. Story arc. Costumes must anticipate change. If a character grows in power or maturity, their wardrobe should evolve accordingly. Designers track this arc to ensure that clothing reflects progression, regression, or transformation. This analysis transforms abstract character descriptions into concrete visual strategies. Costumes as indicators of status, profession, and personality. Costumes often serve as shorthand for who a character is within their world. Status. Clothing communicates wealth, class, or social role. For instance, rich fabrics such as silk or velvet signal affluence, while rougher materials like wool or denim may suggest working-class identity. Subtle wear and tear can reveal financial strain, while immaculate tailoring may suggest privilege or vanity. Profession. Uniforms, work attire, or tools embedded in clothing instantly locate a character within their occupation. A doctor's lab coat, a police officer's uniform, or a chef's apron are instantly recognizable markers of professional role. Even in non-uniform professions, clothing can indicate type: the corporate executive in tailored suits, or the artist in paint-smeared clothes. Personality. Designers often use color psychology and silhouette to reflect inner traits. Bold colors like red or gold suggest confidence, aggression, or extroversion. Muted tones like gray, beige, or pastels may suggest shyness, humility, or melancholy. A rigid silhouette may express discipline or formality, while flowing garments suggest freedom or romanticism. By embedding these signals, designers ensure that the audience perceives character before dialogue even begins. Costume changes as mirrors of growth. Perhaps the most powerful tool in character-driven costume design is the wardrobe arc, the way costumes change alongside character development. Growth into power. A character may begin in plain or ill-fitting clothes, but as they rise in confidence or social rank, their clothing becomes more elaborate and fitted. An example would be a protagonist who starts in humble garb and ends in regal attire, signaling transformation. Maturity or decline. Costume changes can signal maturity as a character adopts more refined styles, or conversely, decline, as clothes become disheveled, darker, or symbolically stripped down. Symbolic turning points. Iconic moments are often marked by costume. A makeover scene, a battle uniform, or a wedding dress can embody a narrative milestone. Even subtle changes, such as shifting from bright to dark tones, can foreshadow a change in mindset. Costume changes thus operate as silent narrators, guiding viewers through the character's journey. How designers infer clues from descriptions. Designers rely heavily on close reading of the script to uncover cues. When a script describes a character as world-weary, the designer interprets this through faded fabrics, softened collars, or muted palettes. If a character is described as burning with ambition, the designer might use sharp cuts, saturated colors, or meticulous grooming to reflect intensity. Symbolic references also require translation. A writer may note that a character wears her mother's scarf. The designer must then choose a fabric, color, and condition that communicates memory, intimacy, and perhaps grief. Such choices root costume in emotional authenticity. Conclusion. Understanding characters is the foundation of costume design. By analyzing personality, background, and story arc, designers craft wardrobes that reveal status, profession, and identity. Costume changes mirror growth, decline, or transformation, ensuring that clothing evolves alongside the story. Through careful interpretation of character descriptions, designers translate abstract traits into concrete visual choices. This process reaffirms a central truth. Costumes are not decoration, but storytelling devices. They allow audiences to see, feel, and anticipate who characters are and who they may become. Researching period and culture for costume design is not solely an act of creativity, it is also an act of scholarship. To design historically accurate and culturally authentic costumes, the designer must engage in a rigorous process of research. This lecture will explore how designers use historical sources, respect cultural traditions, and compile their findings into practical guides that shape the design process. Using historical sources. The first stage in creating historically accurate costumes is to consult primary and secondary sources. Designers immerse themselves in the clothing of the era through text, written documents such as diaries, letters, fashion magazines, and tailors' manuals provide insight into how people described and valued clothing. Paintings and photographs. Visual evidence is invaluable. Portraits, early photography, and street images show how garments were worn in real contexts, including posture and accessories. Museum archives. Many museums preserve garments from specific eras. Studying these artifacts gives designers first-hand knowledge of fabric, stitching, and wear patterns. For example, examining an 18th century gown reveals how stays, a form of corsetry, shape the body. By consulting such sources, designers avoid generic approximations and instead reconstruct the lived clothing of past societies. Respecting cultural clothing traditions. When designing costumes for stories rooted in specific cultural contexts, accuracy must be paired with respect. Misrepresentation or careless borrowing can perpetuate stereotypes. Designers, therefore, consult experts. Cultural historians, anthropologists, or local artisans are brought into the design process to provide context and ensure authenticity. Respect sacred garments. Some clothing has ceremonial or religious significance. Designers must understand these distinctions to avoid trivialization. Avoid stereotypes. Simplified or exaggerated depictions of cultural clothing can distort reality. For example, the Japanese kimono, pronounced kimono, varies in fabric, sleeve length, and decoration depending on age, gender, and occasion. Recognizing these differences prevents costume from becoming caricature. Through this process, costume design becomes not only accurate, but also culturally sensitive. Compiling research into design tools. Research must be organized into practical reference systems that guide the entire production team. Common tools include reference boards or binders. Designers compile images, sketches, and notes into visual collections. These may include paintings of Victorian fashion plates, photographs of mid-century streetwear, or textile samples. Fabric swatches and color palettes. Physical samples of materials ensure that choices remain consistent with the period or culture. A palette dominated by earth tones, for example, might reflect the dyes available in medieval Europe, while bright synthetic colors would be avoided. Digital archives and mood boards. Increasingly, designers also create digital collections that can be shared across departments, ensuring continuity between costume, production design, and cinematography. This systemization ensures that research informs every step of the creative process, from sketch to final fitting. Pronunciation and accessibility. In presenting their research, designers often encounter non-English garment names or technical terms. Clear pronunciation is critical for both collaboration and education. For example, kimono, Japanese pronounced kimono, agbada, West African, pronounced aagbada, hanbok, Korean, pronounced hanbok. By pronouncing terms accurately, designers demonstrate respect for the cultures represented and make the design process accessible to collaborators unfamiliar with those traditions. Conclusion. Research is the foundation of costume authenticity. By consulting historical sources, respecting cultural traditions, and compiling findings into reference systems, designers ensure that costumes are not only visually striking, but also historically and culturally responsible. This scholarly process deepens storytelling, helping audiences feel that they are witnessing not just a film, but a credible slice of history or culture. Costume design at its best is a dialogue between past and present, between culture and creativity. It is through rigorous research that this dialogue gains depth and truth. Concept development, mood boards, and sketches. The journey from script to costume begins not with fabric or sewing, but with conceptual visualization. Costume designers must first articulate the look and feel of a film's wardrobe through visual aids that capture mood, style, and narrative tone. This stage involves creating mood boards, producing preliminary sketches or renderings, and refining these concepts through collaboration and feedback. Creating mood boards. A mood board is a visual collage that serves as the foundation of costume concept development. Designers assemble fabric swatches, small samples of material to capture texture, weight, and color. A velvet swatch might suggest luxury, while coarse linen evokes simplicity. Color palettes, carefully selected hues that reflect tone. Warm earth tones may suggest intimacy or realism, while bold primaries can evoke heightened drama. Inspirational images. These might include historical paintings, photographs, cultural references, or contemporary fashion editorials. For instance, designing for a Victorian drama may involve clipping images of 19th century fashion plates alongside photographs of actual garments preserved in museums. The purpose of the mood board is to capture atmosphere. It is not a final design, but a creative compass pointing the team toward a unified vision, translating ideas into sketches and renderings. Once mood boards establish tone, designers move to sketches and digital renderings. Preliminary sketches. Hand-drawn illustrations show silhouette, detail, and movement. Even rough sketches communicate how fabric might drape or how accessories complete a look. Digital renderings. Increasingly, designers use digital tools to produce polished images. These renderings may incorporate scanned fabrics or three-dimensional modeling to preview costumes with remarkable realism. Sketches and renderings serve as the language of communication between the designer and the director, production designer, or cinematographer. They transform abstract inspiration into a concrete proposal, making it easier for collaborators to visualize and provide feedback. Iterating through feedback. Costume design is inherently collaborative. Initial sketches are rarely final. Instead, they undergo refinement through dialogue with other departments. Director's feedback. The director ensures costumes align with the narrative tone. A design that feels too extravagant for a naturalistic drama may be pared back. Production designer's feedback. Costumes must harmonize with sets and props. A gown's color may be altered to complement a room's palette. Actor's input. Sometimes actors influence how a costume evolves, suggesting adjustments that support their performance. This iterative process ensures that design remains both artistically expressive and practically integrated into the film's world. Clarifying technical terms. For clarity, a mood board is a curated collage of visual materials that convey atmosphere and inspiration. It is not a design, but a collection of guiding images, colors, and textures. A rendering is a more developed visual representation of a costume, whether hand-drawn or digital, that communicates detailed design choices and can be reviewed by collaborators. By explaining these terms, designers ensure that the design process remains accessible to all members of the team, from producers to actors. Conclusion. The concept development phase is the bridge between research and construction. Mood boards allow designers to capture emotional tone and visual direction. Sketches and renderings translate that tone into tangible proposals. Feedback and iteration refine ideas until they fit seamlessly into the film's larger vision. This process reminds us that costume design is not a solitary act of inspiration, but a collaborative and evolving conversation. By starting with mood boards and sketches, designers ground their creativity in shared understanding, ensuring that every costume contributes meaningfully to the storytelling process. Color theory and symbolism in costumes. Color in costume design is more than decoration. It is a language of symbols and emotions that speaks to audiences immediately, often before a character utters a single line. Designers use color psychology, symbolic associations, and planned palettes across characters to shape how viewers interpret story and mood. Common color associations in psychology. Certain colors carry widely recognized meanings that costume designers use deliberately. Red, passion, love, danger, or violence. A character in red may symbolize vitality or threat. Blue, calm, loyalty, melancholy, or detachment. Blue costumes can communicate sadness or serenity. Yellow, optimism or caution. A bright yellow dress might radiate warmth, but a muted yellow could suggest decay. Green, nature, growth, envy, or destiny. It often signals change or transformation. Black, authority, mystery, evil, or grief. Villains are often dressed in black, but so are powerful leaders. White, innocence, purity, or naivety. Brides and heroines often wear white to signal goodness. Audiences may not consciously analyze these associations, but they feel them intuitively. Designers harness this effect to influence perception on a subconscious level. Symbolism in film examples. Films across history have demonstrated the power of color symbolism in costume. White for innocence. In Roman Holiday, 1953, Audrey Hepburn's white blouse and skirt amplify her character's innocence and grace. Red for danger. In The Sixth Sense, 1999, the color red appears only in scenes connected to the supernatural, signaling threat or transformation. Black for villainy. Darth Vader's all-black armor in Star Wars makes him instantly identifiable as a figure of power and menace. Blue for sadness. In Blue Valentine, 2010, muted blue clothing underscores the film's melancholy tone and the emotional distance between characters. These choices guide audiences emotionally without drawing attention away from performance or story. Planning color palettes across characters. Designers also consider how costumes interact on screen as an ensemble. Harmony. Characters on the same team or family may share tones in their costumes, signaling unity. For example, the hobbits in The Lord of the Rings wear variations of earthy greens and browns, grounding them in nature and simplicity. Contrast. Opposing characters may be dressed in colors that clash to heighten conflict. In The Matrix, 1999, Neo's black costume contrasts against the sterile, muted tones of the simulated world, emphasizing his separation from it. Balance. Designers often balance costumes with sets and lighting. A vibrant red dress may be chosen to stand out against a dull background, making the character unforgettable. Color palettes must therefore be considered not just individually, but across the whole cast to support the film's visual tone. Conclusion. Color is a silent storyteller in costume design. By understanding common associations, drawing from symbolic traditions in film, and carefully planning palettes across characters, designers can guide audience perception in subtle but powerful ways. Red may ignite passion or fear. Blue may soothe or sadden. White may purify or expose naivety. Black may empower or terrify. When applied thoughtfully, color transforms costumes from clothing into visual poetry, enhancing narrative and emotion in every frame. Selecting fabrics and materials. Costume design is not complete without careful attention to fabrics and materials. The fabric chosen for a costume does more than clothe an actor. It affects how the character moves, how the costume photographs on camera, and how the audience perceives texture, weight, and realism. In this lecture, we will explore the factors that guide fabric selection, the balance between aesthetics and practicality, and the technical considerations of how materials appear on film. Factors in fabric selection. When costume designers select fabrics, three qualities are paramount. 1. Weight. Heavy fabrics, such as wool or velvet, give garments a sense of richness and structure, but may restrict movement. Light fabrics, such as chiffon or cotton, create a sense of airiness and are easier for actors to wear during long shoots. 2. Drape. Drape refers to how a fabric falls or flows. Silk drapes fluidly, giving an elegant, romantic feel. Stiff fabrics like taffeta or brocade hold their shape, making them ideal for formal, ceremonial, or stylized costumes. 3. Texture. Smooth fabrics such as satin or silk read as luxurious, refined, or delicate. Coarse fabrics like burlap or tweed signal rustic, utilitarian, or rugged qualities. These factors are chosen to suit both the character and the action. For example, a stunt performer may require a stretch fabric that allows agility, while a queen in a historical drama may wear layers of velvet and brocade to emphasize authority. Balancing aesthetics with comfort and practicality. Costume design must also consider the actor's comfort and the demands of filming. Comfort. Actors often wear costumes for long hours under hot lights. Breathable fabrics like cotton or linen may be favored in these cases, even if modern substitutes are used to replicate period looks. Ease of movement. Action sequences demand fabrics that allow flexibility. Stretch panels, hidden gussets, or lighter weight substitutes can make garments both believable and functional. Ease of changing. Quick change costumes may include hidden snaps, zippers, or Velcro, allowing actors to shift wardrobes between takes without disrupting filming schedules. The best costumes balance aesthetic authenticity with practical efficiency, ensuring that actors can perform effectively while maintaining the director's vision. How materials appear on camera. Finally, designers must consider how fabrics will appear once filmed. A garment may look perfect in person, but behave differently on screen. Reflection and absorption. Shiny fabrics like satin or sequined material can reflect studio lights in distracting ways, creating glare. Matte fabrics, by contrast, absorb light and give a softer, more controlled appearance. Color under lighting. Colors can shift under film lights. A bright red may appear darker on camera, while pale colors may wash out. Designers often test fabric samples under production lighting before committing. Sound. Some fabrics even create noise. Leather or stiff nylon can produce audible rustling, interfering with sound recording. Designers anticipate this by choosing quieter substitutes or layering materials to reduce noise. Describing fabric qualities. Simply for clarity, designers often describe fabrics in simple terms that communicate their qualities. Smooth versus coarse. Satin is smooth, burlap is coarse. Heavy versus light. Wool is heavy, chiffon is light. Flexible versus stiff. Lycra is flexible, brocade is stiff. By framing fabric qualities in this way, designers make the technical aspects of fabric choice understandable to directors, actors, and crew who may not have textile expertise. Conclusion. Fabric choice in costume design is both an art and a science. It requires evaluating weight, drape, and texture to suit character and story. It demands a balance between visual impact and actor comfort, and it requires technical awareness of how materials behave under lighting and sound conditions. The fabric is never neutral. It is a storytelling tool. Silk whispers elegance, leather commands toughness, cotton signals simplicity, and velvet exudes power. When selected thoughtfully, fabrics transform costumes from clothing into character.